It is really fun to be in your private recording studio today with you.
Well, I tell you what, I built it for this purpose, which is so that we could share the gifts that our family has to offer with the world.
Well, that's pretty special. Today, of course, I want to focus on primary colors.
Yes, my favorite.
I know. Well, you're a young man and you're newly married and you live in a different generation than I do, of course, being near 70. And I think you're one of the smartest people, not just because you're my son, but because I legitimately think you're that smart. So I want to ask you why you are as passionate as you are about this thing called primary colors that I was able to create so many years ago.
Yeah. Well, as a millennial, especially, I've grown up with social media. And when I went to college, Facebook came out. And then when I left college, Facebook was made available to people outside of just college students. And in the past decade since then, I've really watched that tool that initially started as a way that people would become connected, become an accessory to what is pulling apart society and causing so much misunderstanding because we can't see the intention in anything that's shared. And we can't also control the interpretation of how anything is received. And so what I'm experiencing in now as a 32-year-old young man is that we are living in a call-out culture. And what I see the value of primary colors being is that it is a call-in technology or a call-up technology. Instead of trying to blame, shame, cancel, point out the errors or the hypocrisy in other people, it's a way that we can examine ourselves, our behavioral tendencies, the patterns of behavior, what we're predisposed to do just naturally, and what our personality is, and understand more about how we naturally react so that we can consciously proact or make a decision. Or if someone else isn't necessarily aware of what their predisposition is towards their behavioral tendencies, that we can have understanding in how we interpret. And instead of taking things personally or falling victim to negative interpretation, that there's that possibility for us to see the colors and how they see the world, and through that filter find understanding. And so I think it's a vital tool. I think that, there's a lot of suffering that's going on right now, and a lot of that revolves around identity. Yeah. And people will find their identity in whatever their group affiliation is, but if we begin to pull away all of those loaded group identity concepts, and then we're able to identify more so with our primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, then also know about how that's affecting us at work, at home, what we're seeking in our ideal self, then we have a lot more sovereignty in how we actually navigate and consciously create a more understanding and empathetic world that I would want my kids to grow up in.
I love the way primary colors really invites people to be very self-reflective and become self-aware. We do, in this day and time, it seems like everybody is looking out. Their finger is pointing out to blame or shame someone, where we need to remember to look inward. Like, why are we upset? Why are we reacting the way that we're reacting? Why are we feeling the way that we're feeling? Because I don't think people get an opportunity to ask themselves those really important questions often enough. And we get caught up in a cause or an ideology or politics or whatever it is that we get caught up in, to the point that we don't step out to check out our individuality. Like, what are our values as an individual? And are we behaving in accordance to those values? So how do you see primary colors relating to personal values?
Well, when you begin to identify what your primary color is, you're going to know, first of all, where you value and place the most value in terms of what you're looking from the world and what you're looking from yourself. For instance, me being blue, I really love details.
Yeah.
And I love clear instructions. I love precision, but I also like being right. And when I'm aware that my tendency is to be right, then I'm aware of how I can be condescending towards other people, or potentially have a tendency to make others wrong in situations where things are a little bit disharmonic. And then I look at my secondary coloring, which is orange, which is all about having a great time and being social. Well, clearly, if I'm making people wrong, or if I'm insisting on being right, then I'm not having the best time. We're not having the best time. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at my values and based on what my primary color is, what my secondary color is, well, if my primary color leads me to have a tendency that is sabotaging my secondary color, or my tertiary color, which is all about fairness, understanding, that green.
Right.
Yeah. Then I begin to be able to check my blue and go, okay, well, I know that you love to be right, but I think that what we actually want more so is harmony. And so then I can look at that in terms of my own value system, and then maybe pause, reflect, and make a different choice in terms of how I'm engaging with somebody who isn't doing it quote unquote right. My green will then inform me, my tertiary color, is there such a thing as right?
Right.
Maybe it just is. And the beauty is in accepting. And then in that, the orange, we can all have fun.
Right. It's very interesting because, when you talk about our color blends and how they're contextual. So our blend of who we respond as or act as in the world, in our work, color blend might be very different than who we are in our personal color blends, and might even be very different than our ideal self, which we wish we were. But when we have that awareness, and we think about the context that we're living in, then we also can have expectations even about ourselves. So let's take your primary color, for example, blue. You in the workplace, and I know that you are a brilliant writer and you are a movie maker, and I have seen you be excruciatingly critical of your stuff. That's part of your blue. That's part of striving for excellence and wanting to get it right. But at the same time, if you don't allow that orange to come in to say, look, you are a writer and you are a movie maker and you are all of these great things to enjoy, not to make yourself miserable with, but to actually enjoy your life. And then your green steps in and says, and not only that, Corbin, you get to make a difference with all of these talents. And so it takes kind of that anxious, frustrating experience of the blue, which is all good because it does drive you to excellence, but it balances it. And that's what we call coming back to center.
Yeah. Well, I'm experiencing it right now, to be totally honest with you, because as I'm sitting here, I've realized, my blue has realized that your headphone is on inside out. But and rather than redo this entire thing, I just want to be able to laugh about it. And I want to be able
that
to.
That makes my orange crack up.
Yeah. So we're not going to redo anything, but we're just going to embrace, that this is a funny learning moment.
I love that. Well, and see how much more fun life is. Oh, and I hear much better when it's turned the correct way. I love that I am so green and so orange and then so yellow and of course, my lowest color in my personality inventory blends is blue. So the details are never the things that I think about. They're never even the things that I see. Do you realize that with my coloring, I could have sat here the entire time that we're talking and never even realized I had this turned the wrong way.
And then I also know that everybody who's blue and purple that watches this is going to be saying, what is going on? Do these people have any clue?
Wait, this guy has his own studio, and yet his mother has got her. Pretty great. Pretty fun.
You couldn't plan that.
Oh, yeah, I know. Perfect example. Okay, another thing that I would love to really get into with you is with all of your different passions and interests. You have expressed to me fervently that you want to continue this legacy of mine. You know, I'm getting up there in years. And I created this inventory in the 80s and old school paper and pencil. And it's doing a lot of just corporate work and groups, churches, things like that. And you came into my life and said, you know, why don't we drag you kicking and screaming out of the 80s
into the digital age?
And why don't we take you from the, you know, I think I'm still back in the, what is that guy in the Star Galaxy, Guardians of the Galaxy?
Oh, Star-Lord has his tape cassette player.
Right. I'm still like in the tape cassette age, and you are so far much more advanced than that. And so when you came to me and said, I really feel strongly about yanking you out of that tape cassette age and bringing you up to date, and I would like to create the test, the way to take the test, the technology of how to take the technology to a whole new level. And then you created our new way of taking the test, which is so fabulous and fun and so exciting. So I just want to know, as you think about taking this technology and taking it into your world, which is high technology, you were the one that very first said it's so important to take this information out of just the counselor's office or the corporation and give it to the individual. There are people out there that so need this information, and they need to be able to take it quickly. They need to be able to have fun with it. So as you see this evolving, where do you see primary colors getting to go?
Well, I operate by interpreting the world through archetypes. And I think a lot of people sometimes latch on to an archetype to give them a role model in terms of how they could be their best self or reach their goal. For instance, if you want to be a basketball player, your perfect archetype is going to be Michael Jordan, you know, or LeBron James. And I bet even with LeBron James, he looked at Michael Jordan as his archetype. How often does he practice? How does he behave? How does he treat his body? And what is his discipline? And then that's going to inform how you can achieve that result. And so when we look at archetypes, you know, people are always trying to figure out how they can model their life off of their archetype. You see this entire thing with horoscopes that people love to read their daily horoscope and then figure out, oh, well, this is coming in or this is how I should respond. But this technology is way more focused and individualized. And then based on your color blend, that can give you your archetype. But it's not one thing like in all of these color tests that I've taken before that are 4-quadrant, and it just sort of boxes you into one. It doesn't have the fluidity of being able to acknowledge not only that it's never just one color, but that every single color is beautiful in its center and everything is in harmony. But every single color in its extreme is toxic. And then as a result, conflict is created. So I'm all about reducing conflict, and I'm all about empowering people with tools that help them better understand their personal archetype. So for me, my personal archetype at this point is, you know, blue, orange, green. Well, what does that mean? That's going to mean that if I'm engaging in, a filmmaking endeavor, that I'm not torturing myself by having to get everything perfect, but I'm also enjoying the process and making sure that it's also a pleasant experience for everyone on set, rather than being a sort of a tyrant director that's ordering people around, and if they fail, then, you know, humiliating them. It's much more about embracing the collaboration. And that's really the reward of the process, and an additional reward of the art. You know, they say that the journey is the reward as opposed to the destination. So when I see the technology moving forward, I saw something that was a paper test that I found a great deal of value in, because I am more head-oriented than heart-oriented. And primary colors always gave me a access into understanding someone else's emotions and their feelings. And so I'd have girls take the test before I would consider dating them. but then they would always take the test wrong because they're filling out this kind of confusing paper test. And now the inspiration that I had in terms of making it something that's bubble popping and that the algorithm itself calculates, so there's less math, which is great nowadays.
Right.
People don't like to do math. They like to have the algorithm do it for them. But that then they can have that resource in their pocket. And that we could expand primary colors because there's all of these archetypes that exist in all of the stories that we consume. I mean, deep down where I am as a writer, as a storyteller, a filmmaker, it all comes down to storytelling. We learn how to be based on the archetypes of not only our family, but in the media that we consume. So people being able to watch a program, or I see in their favorite superhero, or even in their religious deities and people that they work with, they can begin to identify these archetypes and then know exactly how they should act, or, oh, that's how that person would respond. And then it gives you a certain ability to see into what is behind the actions and then be even more understanding and also predict how things could go. Based on, that movie I saw, well, that guy was purple, green, yellow. He responded like this. Well, I don't want that to happen, so I might want to approach this a different way. And really just expand that. So you could create an entire library that is looking at and analyzing how the colors are at play in the stories that are nearest and dearest to our hearts, from The Wizard of Oz to Star Wars to Guardians of the Galaxy. And then in that, we're even achieving more understanding. Because so much of this world now is based on the media that we're consuming. And I don't see that changing. I just see it going deeper and deeper into what is the difference between the reality and the fantasy. And I think that the biggest thing that's going to be a tool to help people stay rooted in the reality is understanding themselves and going in and understanding their own color blend.
Well, and I think it's very exciting because when I was growing up, of course, we had fairy tales. And someone would either tell them to us or they would read them to us. And now people aren't reading as much, and people aren't even telling as much, and they're not even talking as much. So where we find who we want to be like, we have to look for some sort of archetype, or what I love to call heroes.
Role models, yeah.
Yeah, and our hero blend, like. And then what would that hero blend of colors do? What would, if Martin Luther King, he's so green, and my primary color is green. So he becomes, of course, a role model in how would he respond and what would he think and how peaceful and nonviolent he is and how much that inspires me, or Gandhi, for example. So I love that. As we've talked, you are going to help me take this into a way where we begin to look at some of these heroes, whether they're superheroes or they're in fairy tales or there are real life heroes, and begin to really discern what color blends would inspire someone to make those choices and to live the lives that they lived.
Yeah, it makes me, the reason this all came about was I remember reading Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And then he would talk about his mastermind group, that he'd be able to learn enough about certain individuals throughout history that he could sit at a table with them. And whenever he was faced with a decision in life, he could get all of their inputs. And I believe that the core of what that actually is understanding the color blends of various individuals. And once you understand that, then you can call them to counsel in your mind and be even more informed in how you make decisions so that you can reach your idealist self or get as close to that goal that you envision as possible.
Well, and it's exciting to think that if we did have a big table and you could look around and actually speak to all of your heroes to get their perspective. But if we just simply understand the color blends from which they made so many of their choices, we develop a whole new perspective, and we can take a situation and look at it. How would a predominantly yellow person experience this or react to this? Or how would a predominantly purple person, all of the different colors, the one thing that I love about it is that you can count on a purple being purple. You can count on a yellow being yellow. And the only time that we get into trouble is when we start confusing ourselves and imagining that I fell in love with a blue, and now he's all of a sudden going to treat me with the kindness and the consideration and the care that a yellow would treat me with. If I can just remember, oh my gosh, no, I fell in love with a strength personality. I fell in love with blue and his purple and his ability to organize and manage, and his red, his ability to succeed. As your father is a neurosurgeon or retired neurosurgeon. And so one of the things that really has impacted my life and actually motivated me to create this was trying to help me understand and then remember he is who he is, and he's good at being who he is. And the only time when I'm really frustrated and I look at what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to get who he is to be different than who he is, instead of loving him and accepting him and appreciating him for who he is.
Yeah, there's a lot that can be gained from working with the test and then understanding with your significant other or someone that you're in a relationship with to meet them where they are as opposed to where you expect them to be.
Or want them to be.
Where you feel entitled.
Right, exactly.
That they should meet you.
Right.
And, I was born with very little yellow. It's always been my weakest color, but as a result of it, that's what I seek out romantically. Mm-hmm. My ideal self is much more empathetic, much more open, loving, understanding.
Right.
And so I would find myself constantly attracted to women that were strong yellows and strong greens. And then as a result, facing that conflict of being like, why is everything such a ceremony? Why does everything have to be? I mean, I'm romantic so naturally. Emotional. I like big grand gestures, but when we have to cuddle by a certain time or this expectation of quality time, it gets a little too much. It's like, well, hey, I did the thing. What more do you want? You want me to smile while I do it? What Primary Colors has helped me be able to do is to be able to paradigm surf, where I can see and understand what it's like to look through yellow glasses and really grow that emotional intelligence within myself. Because as a storyteller, as a writer, you're constantly trying to put yourself into the minds of other characters and understand how they're seeing the world or how they're interpreting certain things. And I think that has naturally given me an ability to be able to put myself in the minds of different people who see the world differently. And that's been a beautiful thing. So now what I find is, in whether they're professional relationships or romantic relationships with a yellow, I can really take the time and I can understand. I can go, okay, well, slow the roll. We may need to do a little bit of shifting here in how I'm seeing the world and how I'm expecting her to see the world. Mm-hmm. I have the capacity, based on these tools that are in my toolbox, mm-hmm. that she may not have or that other people may not have because they haven't familiarized themselves with the technology. And then I can cry her tears. I can take a moment to experience her suffering, or experience her expectations, mm-hmm. and then better be able to meet them instead of just being stuck on my side. Mm-hmm. And it's also those little things. Sometimes it's the salt. It's the flavoring of somebody that it's just like, that's just a little sour, a little bitter, but I do appreciate that that's their unique flavor.
Right.
And that's what I sought out. So, it's a tool that constantly helps me to return to my center, be the most understanding man that I can be. And in that way, I actually am reaching my highest potential and what I envision as my highest self, because that's not what I was naturally predisposed to be personality and behavior-wise. But Primary Colors has really been a tool that's allowed me to grow that as someone who's very strength-oriented, to really be able to access. And maybe it's not equal, but it's balanced.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is one of the reasons why I created Relationship Help at Home. The entire course, of course, is built on the Primary Colors technology, first of all, and then all of the truths about what makes a relationship work and what breaks a relationship. We are going to do a fun experiment, because relationship help at home I built based on romantic relationships. But I think that familial relationships are as powerful and as intimate, complex as romantic relationships. And because you and I are very different coloring, we've had our own ways of misseeing each other's world, which I think people can really relate to. So we have talked about you and I doing the relationship course and then sharing with people how we experienced that as a mother-son versus I know how it works with romantic couples. I've been using that information for over 40 years. But we're going to play a fun game, and we're going to do the relationship program and then report back as to how indeed, because we already are familiar with the primary colors, how the actual relationship part of it, going through that course, impacts us and our relationship as mother and son.
I agree. It was my idea.
I know. It was a great idea.
Yeah, it comes down to, I value our relationship a great deal. And just like a lot of families out there, 2020 and the years leading up to it didn't always mean us seeing eye to eye. Mm-hmm. But rather than let go of what I value most in order to feel righteous in myself, I'd much rather let go and be open to healing and to seeking. Less thinking about that I know everything. And I know that you've created this technology. I know that you've been helping people and couples heal and grow my entire life. And I know the value that's here. And I don't want it to be something that because we get caught up in little discrepancies,
philosophies or politics, or
that then we let go of the big picture.
Right.
I think as we both have strong green.
Yes.
And that's where
we're both stubborn, and we have strong.
Well, we're both
opinions.
Leos.
Yeah.
And we both think that we're the king/queen of the jungle. But I'm over here trying to find the circle of life. And I think that it's something that we could both learn from each other and continue to grow. And rather than finding ourselves fragmented, find ourselves back in center and harmony and closer together.
Well, I know that you're one of my greatest treasures in my life. And not since the Civil War have people been, families especially, been so divided. What I would love to allow people to watch is how we can take the technology, both the relationship technology and the personality and communication technology, and use it to just completely enhance, strengthen, and grow a relationship in a way that will last for the rest of our lives. You were talking about archetypes, and I have a dream. The dream is that we can choose to take the technology that we offer and use it to become a model or an archetype of a great parent and child relationship, a parent and child coming together, even though they're decades apart and society is switched and changed in a lot of different ways. So I'm really excited and looking forward to that. And I think it'll be kind of entertaining for people to watch and hear.
Yeah. Well, it will certainly be dramatic.
As always. Well, thank you, Corbin. I know that you have a very busy life, and I appreciate you bringing me into your studio today so that we can share this time together. And I'm really looking forward to doing a lot more of it in the future. And I also, before we close this, I want to thank you so much for falling in love with my technology. And it makes me feel so happy and proud when I think that my own son would care enough about my technology that he would want to continue it long after I'm not on this planet. So I want to thank you so much for that. It means the world to me.
Oh, well, you mean the world to me. It's my pleasure. We are in a time of chaos, and I have made my alliance with order, and my archetypes are in order, and I know that this tool and technology can be instrumental in helping the world rediscover order.
And love.
Yes, because that is the order.
Right.
The love
Love
is the harmony.
only truth. That's right.
It's true. Only love is real. And all
Right.
of these other illusions that are fed by fear
Right.
are distortions that take our colors from the center, from a place of order, from perfect
Absolutely.
harmony into extremes.
Yes.
And
And destroy us and everything that we care about.
exactly. And I care too much about this world and about humanity. For whatever reason, I'm green. to allow it to continue to fragment. And I do believe that if we allow ourselves and remain open to being archetypes, like you say, of a model relationship, model relationship of a mother and son dynamic, that it can promote healing. and
Well, not only a
understanding.
mother-son dynamic, but any child, a parent, but also with different coloring. There are going to be lots of parents and children who have similar coloring, and they're going to basically, it's not nearly as hard to get each other or to agree with each other. You and your dad get each other a lot. Your brother and I get each other a lot. So this will be fun because we're really taking a lot of strength and a lot of warmth, and we're taking a lot of the blue and the red and the purples, and we're comparing them to a lot of the mushy gushy other colors. So I think it's going to be really fun.
I'm excited, and I love you.
I love you too.